for liftoff.
Blanket Hill. The Bill Stuyvesant Memorial Race. Close to 40 cars, a lot of fast cars, great competition, big payout, just a really cool atmosphere and a ton of energy. Had all the fixings for a special night. But it turned out to be pretty special, just not in the way that I intended it to be. So all things were going really smoothly in the garage that day. My car was pretty much dialed in. We thought it was ready to rock, ready to roll. We thought we were gonna be real fast too. And then we just wanted to double check on Ty's clutch because he was having clutch problems the week prior. We thought we fixed it, but it turns out we didn't. We told Ty, take the car down the block real quick and just double check that the clutch is working. As soon as he shifted into first gear, the car stalled. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Hey! There it is. Turns out the clutch wasn't engaging and he couldn't shift. Take the clutch packs out and we don't even know how to fix it at this point. We don't even know how to fix it and we wanted to leave within the next hour. And then to top it all off, my dad broke a bolt off inside of the motor. That was it. We weren't taking the car that day. There was no fixing it in time. So unfortunately, we had to leave Ty's car at the house. But you know, Ty was a great sport about it. He was like, you know, shake it off. It's not the end of the world. Like, I'll still come. I'll help you guys out. It's still going to be a fun night. So, you know, we took his advice. We loaded the cars up on the trailer. And we figured we'd leave all the bad luck here right in the garage. Get it all out before we get to the racetrack. So we're feeling good. Loaded the cars up. And we headed on our 2.5-hour drive to Blanket Hill. We pull in, right away you can just feel the excitement, the atmosphere is different. It's different than just the regular Saturdays at Good Raceway, you know. You could tell something was different, something was special, something was in the air that night, and it just got me going, it got me fired up. Got me excited to race, and you know, I felt like I had something to prove. I haven't really been able to prove that, you know, we can be a top car, we can be a fast car. We've had a little string of bad luck here and there, and we haven't always had my car perfect and dialed in, but I thought tonight was gonna be different. So we roll in, we get parked, we get settled in right next to the soup cans, and we're just enjoying ourselves, talking, and then we say, you know, let's take a walk through the pits, see all the cars, and I gotta pull my pill. So we walk through the pits. We see all kinds of familiar faces from Goods Raceway, and we're counting close to 40 plus cars in my division.
Yeah, 54. Wait, you got me? Yeah,
how you feel about this place? It's crazy. Eventually, we make it over to the pill draw station, and of course, just my luck, I pull a 76. Right when I thought we left all the bad luck in the garage at home, I pulled a 76. You know, I was just kind of hoping I'd catch a break on my pill for once. I always pull high numbers. I never get to good starting spots. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed about my pill draw, but I'm like, you know, it is what it is. Got to make the most of what we got to work with. So we shake it off. We do it. We go to the driver's meeting. Driver's meeting's great. So we head back, start gearing up for hot laps. And for hot laps, I just wanted to feel good in the car. I wanted to feel good on the track. Just get a good feel. Get some good mojo heading into the heat race. So my reaction after hot laps is, dang, the car felt pretty good. And the track is awesome. Super fun to race on. My only critique about the car was that it's a little tight under entry, but that was fixable. So after some discussion with my dad and my grandpa, we decided we're gonna loosen the car up a little bit under entry, hopefully. So we add a little stagger and take the tiniest bit of wedge out, turn a tick or two of rear brake on because I had accidentally turned some front brake on. We're thinking we're barely loosening the car up. It's not gonna be bad. It's gonna be perfect heading in to the heat race. So we're feeling good until I go up and see my starting spot. And I realize that I'm starting in the last heat and I am in the back row of the last heat. So I'm starting 7th out of 8 cars. So the way this works is I have to finish in the top 4 of my heat race to make the main event show. So that means I have to pass at least 3 cars in 10 laps to make the show. But you know, I'm thinking I can do that. I can manage that. I feel like we're pretty fast. We can handle that, especially if we made the right call on loosening the car up. So we head out for the heat race. So right away, I'm off to a decent start. But the first thing that I notice is that we went a little too far on our changes. I'm a little loose in the turns. And coming out of the turns especially, I'm loose. But despite being a little loose, I felt like a caged rat. I was still way faster than the guys that were in front of me, even though the car was anything but perfect. So eventually, I make my way up into 5th. But of course, right when I go to pass the 814 for 4th place in the final transfer spot into the main show tonight, I get a big run out of 2. I'm driving on the inside of him, and he gets loose. Of course he gets loose coming out of this turn. And he spins out, and he takes me with him. Just my luck, right? So I'm frustrated. We're about halfway through the heat race, and I'm going all the way back to the tail because he spun me out. Nothing he could do about it. It wasn't intentional by any means, but he spun me out. And I go to the rear, and I'm thinking, well, I just got to try to do it again in half the time. So to top it all off, I get up into 5th, right? I pass my way up there again. And by the time I get up there, the other 4 cars are out there a little ways, but I start to gain on them. I'm driving the car really hard, trying to get into that final transfer spot, trying to catch up to them. But of course, I'm driving just a little bit too hard and the car doesn't feel great. I'm loose coming out of the turn and I'm standing in the throttle a little too hard, and of course I spin out by myself. Now because I was a part of 2 cautions on the track, they made me go to the pits. That's the way it works in the heat race. So I finished last in the heat race. Honestly, in that moment, I couldn't have been any more frustrated. I was frustrated that I got spun out when I was getting that final transfer spot, but then I was really frustrated with myself that I made it all the way up to 5th and then I spun out by myself. So yeah, really disappointed in the way that heat race went. So we tightened the car back up and we think we got it dialed in for the B main race. A lot better than the heat race, all in hopes that I'll be a lot faster in the B main. Well, we come to find out that I start 8th out of the 9 cars in the B main race, in the second B main race. And I have to pass 6 cars to make my way up into 2nd to make the final show. So I have to pass 6 cars in 10 laps to make the final show. I'm thinking, you know, it's gonna be really tough, but it's very possible because I know that I'm faster than a lot of the guys that are out there. So we head out there for the B main race. And this is where things go sideways. So right out the rip, I passed 5 cars on the opening lap. I passed about 2 or 3 in entering the first corner. And I'm thinking, dang, I feel pretty fast. I feel pretty good. Don't feel perfect, but I feel good. But once I passed those 5 cars, that's when things went terribly wrong. So as soon as we started making contact, I thought I was just gonna spin out. But then I felt the left rear of my car just dig into the ground. And meanwhile, he's still just plowing through me. Like, it seems like he didn't even let out of the throttle. He's just plowing through me, turning left as well, which doesn't make any sense unless he was trying to wreck me. But you think he'd been turning right. But he was turning left. But as soon as that left rear dug into the ground and I started catching air, it was like slow motion. It was actually so surreal. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm flipping right now. So I took my hands off the wheel because at that point I had no control over the car. And I kind of just put my hands on my head because that was like, in my first thoughts was I just don't want my head banging around. I don't want a concussion or anything, which I have great neck restraint gear on. That's gonna help my head from not moving. But I just put my hands on my head and it was like, it was like I was slow motion, like just flying in the air, and it felt like a million thoughts were like going through my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, my car is gonna be trashed. Like, what in the world? Like, why is this happening? Like, freaking bad luck. Like, and then boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And I land. And then I land on my side. And they push me over and they're like, are you okay? Okay. I'm like, I'm chilling. I'm good. I'm good. I'm fine. And then I get out the car and get on the wrecker, and yeah, it was something. If I had to describe it in any way, it was like a roller coaster, but probably the coolest roller coaster I've ever been on, except for the fact it destroyed my race car. No injuries at all, no injuries, thankfully.
Coming down the front straight.
Yeah, I don't even really know what to say. I have a lot of mixed feelings watching this crash back, because there's a lot of different things that are going on here. But the first thing I'll say is I don't think 62 had any like malicious intent in trying to crash me. I don't think there was any intent behind it. But let me break down to you everything that I'm seeing, which is a lot of different things, because I've had about a week long to ponder everything that's happened. The first thing I notice, or that I'll point out, is that I was moving up the track coming out of the turn. As always, like every corner I run, and just like any moment of racing, when you come out of the turn, you begin drifting up the track towards the wall. Now the next thing I'll say is that some people may look at this footage and think, oh, the 62 car was pinned up against the wall, he had nowhere to go. He had no more room to move up. That is false. The video may be deceiving, but there was actually room for probably a whole nother car in between him and the wall up there. So in my opinion, the 62 car could have kept moving up towards the wall, but he really chose to hold his ground, which is understandable to some degree. I guess to really break the whole situation down, the 62 car had 3 decisions. At the point where I was coming out of the turn, I was beating him out of the turn pretty good. I was in front of him enough to the point where I couldn't see him out of my peripherals at one point, coming out of the turn, and he was faced with 3 decisions as I began drifting up the track. He could continue drifting up the track towards the wall with me. He could let out the throttle, and in both of those 2 cases, I pass him. 100%, he's pretty much done. And the third option is hold his ground and know that I'm gonna go front flipping down the straightaway. Not know I'm gonna go front flipping, but know that we're gonna make contact and we're gonna wreck. There was no buts about it. If he held his ground, we were wrecking. And at that point, I couldn't even see him. You know, in my experience racing, anytime I'm in the shoes of the 62 car, I typically let out of the throttle or continue moving up the racetrack. But if there was no more racetrack there, if I was up next to the wall, I typically will let out the throttle, especially if I know I'm getting beat. I don't want to cause a wreck. I don't want to tear up anybody's stuff, especially myself, if I was in his shoes, I don't want to wreck. I don't want to cause my car to wreck. But I also understand he doesn't want to lose his last transfer spot into the feature. I get that. But let me show you the GoPro footage from the car that was behind it. It's not a perfect view, but it'll kind of let you see some of these things that I'm talking about. Also, to show that there was a lot more room up by the wall for the car to move up the track, take a look at where the 6 car came out of the turn and went right up by the wall in comparison to where the 62 car is when he's going down the straightaway. The 6 was a lot closer to the wall, proving there was a lot more room there. So what I see watching this GoPro footage back is that there's a lot more room up next to that wall for him to continue moving up the racetrack if he wanted to. I do see myself slowly drifting up the track, and I see him really hold it down, hold the car down, coming out of the turn. But this is where I'm really gonna start breaking it down, and this is kinda where my thought process began to kinda, I don't know, change or be frustrated. So after the wreck, I was in the infield when they started the race back up, sitting on the wrecker. So I got to watch a race, and I got to see it from a pretty cool perspective. And one of the things that I noticed is that Teeters passed the 62 car, which I kind of saw coming because Teeters is real fast. And at that point, I'm kind of hoping he passed him. But he passes him. I wish we had this on video, but we don't. I bet you somebody does. But after Teeters passed the 62 car, Teeters and 62 were entering turns 1 and 2. And Teeters was a little bit ahead of him. He had him cleared for sure. But 62 drove into turn 1 with the intent to make contact with Teeters. No doubt about it. I was watching it. He went in there like a wild man. No brakes, no nothing. Flew in there and made contact. Like hit hard Teeters' left quarter panel in the middle of the turn. He pretty much used Teeters to stop. And when I saw that, that's when it like flipped in my head like, oh my gosh, this guy is out here to wreck people. And I look back at the footage with me and him, and I don't think he was trying to wreck me. But it makes sense that when he was faced with those 3 decisions to either move up the track, let out of the throttle, or wreck me, or stay in the throttle, hold his ground, and choose an inevitable wreck, it makes sense after seeing that he tried to wreck Teeters that would be the decision he made. The decision to stay in the throttle, hold the car down, and inevitably make contact with me. It makes sense that he chose that decision. So yes, he blatantly tried to wreck Teeters. I don't think he blatantly tried to wreck me, but I know he blatantly tried to wreck Teeters. That way he could get his transfer spot back into the big show. He wanted to spin him out. So that's when I saw that, that's when my thought process about the entire situation started to change. Now I also want to take a look at the first lap that I tried passing the 62 car. I come into 3 and 4 and I'm on the outside of him. And as we are coming out of the turn, it's a similar situation to the one where me and him got in a wreck. Now it's not perfect, it's not a perfect situation by any means. And in this situation, I wasn't in as deep as him as he was in the situation where we wrecked. But I will say this, coming out of the turn, I'm kind of like right here with him. And he's moving up the track. Of course, he has a right to do so. He has a right to do so. And I was faced with the decision, do I want to stay in the throttle like a wild man? Or do I want to let out the throttle just the tiniest bit and avoid causing a wreck? And of course, I let out the throttle. He had every right to continue moving up the racetrack, and I let out the throttle, and no wreck was caused. Now, it's not a perfect scenario, and it's not the exact same scenario that he was in when we wrecked. But I will say, I don't know, it just seems like the right racing etiquette for him to have let up out of the throttle just the tiniest bit, or to at least continue moving up the racetrack to not cause a wreck. I guess to summarize pretty much everything that I said, I don't think he had any malicious intent in trying to wreck me, but I know he tried to wreck Teeters. Do I think it was all of his fault when we made contact and wrecked? No, not at all. I was moving up the racetrack. Maybe I shouldn't have been moving up that much. However, do I believe he had a decision? He had the opportunity to continue moving up the racetrack or to let out the throttle a tiniest bit to avoid the wreck from happening? I absolutely think so. But yes, I do understand that if he did one of those 2 things, I would have passed him. Which I get that too. He didn't want to lose his spot. But all in all, we front flip rolled down the front straightaway. It was crazy. One thing I do regret as well is that when we went into the pits afterwards, there was a little bit of an altercation of words. And I wish I hadn't said anything to begin with. But you know, in the moment, your car's destroyed and I watched him try to wreck somebody, so I was pretty heated. Pretty frustrated. In the aftermath, I wish I hadn't said anything at all, which I didn't say much, but I wish I would have kept my cool just a little bit more. But to some degree, I feel like I did a decent job, considering I flipped down the straightaway and stuff. I kind of kept it cool.
Coming down the front straight.
How good are you? How good? Got it? Hold on.
You might have to lift the front up.
That's good. Wow. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
But some of you may be wondering what is broke on the car, and let me give you a quick rundown. So actually the front end of the car is pretty darn good. Very minimal damage to the front end of the car. But the rear of the car is what really got destroyed. I don't think any of the frame is bent, which is really good. But the radiator was bent in like a U, so the radiator was trash. The entire rear end is was pretty much junk. The left axle snapped in half. The rotor and the hub bearing on the left rear tire is destroyed. The rear end housing itself is all bent up. When you spin the tires, when you spin the rear end, the tires are like so the rear end, we tried our best to straighten the rear end. The lower control arm was trash. The panhard bar was actually pretty good. I'm pretty sure both the shocks were destroyed. At least I know the right rear shock was broke. Left rear tire, flat. Both the right rear and the left rear wheels are destroyed. So yeah, car's pretty rough. We've made a ton of progress on it already though. We're not gonna be racing today. Today's Saturday and we're not gonna be racing. We don't have my car ready to go yet. But Ty's gonna be racing and then we're gonna be going on vacation for a week. But hopefully, that week when we return, we'll be racing again. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you are new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button down below for future racing videos, fishing videos, boat videos, and to just support my channel, support the growth. So, guys, I love you. Appreciate every single one of you that watch this video. Hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the Blanket Hill Memorial Race night. And I'll see some of you out on the track. Peace.